Tesla does a blitzkrieg of 10 Chinese cities at the same time for the intro of the Model Y that's built in China. So we take a look at some of the implications of this blitzkrieg as opposed to sort of build cars in large numbers and ship it to one place at a time. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first time, welcome. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. We also want to thank our Patreon supporters. If you enjoy the show, please take time to like and subscribe. So I wanted to note that today, one of our big focuses over time has been what's going on in China. And today is no different based on new news that's occurring that we're obviously seeing. What I wanted to make sure of is that I really think that this is a bad show if you don't want to think, because we're going to run through some data that we know, but there's a lot of unknowns that we have to fill in the gap. And what I've noticed in the past is people who don't want to think tend not to enjoy that show because there's a constant comment about speculation and therefore they're not interested. So if you're not interested, don't watch. And we have a lot of smart people that watch our show. We love your comments. I would appreciate your taking time to share constructive ideas that can add to our understanding of what's going on. So the first thing we wanted to review again is that Tesla actually had the introduction of the vehicle in 10 different cities all at the same time. This is a requirement, I believe, of what Tesla's agreed to do per when they're allowed to start selling cars agreement with the Chinese government. I believe that the goal of the Chinese government was to hopefully slow Tesla down a bit from this very blitzkrieg, because if customers all over the country are seeing vehicles show up in their neighborhoods rather than being delayed and just Shanghai getting vehicles, that's actually a disaster, because now you have Elon showing up and become a competitor right away, where in some cases you actually have manufacturers that have regional strength, meaning that the local population has a relationship with the company maybe in other ways and therefore would be willing to purchase vehicles from them if a Tesla was not available. So Elon's method has really kind of screwed up this whole slow down the company process. The next question you can see, well, the next item I wanted to review is the whole stockpile issue. Now, we estimated that there was somewhere around 40,000 vehicles produced at the China Gigafactory and then shipped to those facilities. Now, our estimate was based on the fact that they had about 5 weeks at 5,000 vehicles per week to get this done. Now, I got a whole bunch of flack about this number, and I wanted to review a few points with you. Number one, they didn't send 10 cars to those facilities across that long a distance. That just didn't happen. Number two, Tesla's facility in Fremont and in China have the capability of what I call flex manufacturing, meaning they can be flexible across the type of vehicles that need to be produced. So therefore, in the Model 3 factory in Fremont, if they need more Model Ys, they can flex. We also have in the Fremont factory the same line that runs the Model S runs the Model Y. So if you need more of one or the other, you could simply alternate the number of the vehicles on the production line because the internal parts are so close in number. So what this therefore means is that we can get large amounts of Model Ys being produced because it was anticipated those numbers would be very large. And those large amounts of Model Ys can flex between 3 and Y as needed. So I bring up these issues because this is why Tesla is capable easily of 5,000 Model Ys a week, and the mix is expected to be 60-40 Model Ys to Model 3s. So it's our estimate that there's at least 20,000 cars out there already that are going, that are sitting at locations and ready for users to take. That's about 2,000 cars a location. But frankly, knowing Elon, I think the number could be closer to 40 or 50,000, because 4 weeks of production at 5,000 vehicles a week or 4 to 6 weeks of production at 5,000 wheels a week starts to pull you towards the higher end of that number. And we also know the fact that they weren't, they had a number of people who had reservations starting in June for this vehicle. So the number of maybe 50 to 100,000 people already had reserved. So the problem that pops up is that they already know the reservation holders for the Model Ys, but the Model 3s, from starting in August, the Model 3 line had gotten very short to no line at all. And so therefore, they're really filling orders for customers that have been waiting quite a while for these vehicles, making it easier to ramp production to get them their cars immediately, which is what they've started to do in terms of the intro of this new vehicle. So I wanted to kind of run down sort of these points. Another issue is there's a new backlog of the Model Y, and I'm intrigued because sometime in the next few weeks, we're actually going to see a beginning. So what we're looking forward to is that as you got an excess inventories of Model 3s that are at the low end, there's a process of putting on ships to Europe, and they announced that before they did it. I don't expect the Model Y to go anywhere except for China for the next 3 to 6 months based on demand, especially created by the $42,000 vehicle that's been discussed. So that backlog forces them to keep those cars in country that are being produced. And I don't think they'll run out of demand for it and start shipping out for at least 6 months, but obviously it could be sooner. We'll know more about that, which will tell us what the demand level is. The next issue we wanted to cover is that it's my belief that the China facility is currently capable of 500,000 vehicles, and I believe that by June of this coming year, they'll be capable of 1 million vehicle run from that facility. Because as you look at the growth of square footage, it's clear that, the 500,000 is a no-brainer. The question is, when do they get to 1 million? Is it midsummer, or is it the end of this year that they're capable of that just in China? Now, this brings a really interesting question, which is what happens to Fremont and what happens to Germany? And the reason for that is the low-cost producer in the chain for Tesla is currently China. So what actually happens to Fremont as China fills up with Model 3s at the low end? They're still taking high-end Model 3s from Fremont in small numbers but most of those cars from Fremont are going to Europe or staying in the United States. That price point, as a result, is sucking down a lot of cars, and in theory will start to have sort of a change of heart by buyers, especially if they have access to the Chinese vehicles. The next issue to consider here is just the fact that there's this problem where each of the factories is going to be competing for customers, and if China is a low-cost producer, and there are a lot of customers that show up for that cheaper vehicle, definitely in Europe when it starts there, and I'm wondering how they're going to deal with number of vehicles coming out of Fremont if in fact the demand is greater for the cheaper vehicle, and that vehicle, particularly with the cattle batteries, is not being produced in California. I believe the answer is that the Biden administration is going to allow them to start shipping cars from China into the United States as well, rather than just Europe. And I think they'll work out the arguments they're having with the Chinese to get this done. But I do think that there's an interesting question mark that's showing up right now, which is the lower the price of the vehicle, the larger the number of consumers that can afford it, and therefore the larger the number of orders you'll get. And right now, it's unclear to me what are they going to do with all that production capacity at the medium and high end. Another note I would make to you is we still have our $10 bounty if you can find a photo of Elon actually driving a Model Y. And the reason is that he knows that the Model Y is going to be number one, but he's hoping that by staying away from it, he can convince more customers to buy Ys or buy X's rather than Ys because of the gull wings and other things that he did on that vehicle that he loves. But the price point is prohibitive based on the number of people that have the funds and want to spend that much on that car. So The, uh, the other thing I found strange about this vehicle is how feature rich it is relative to what we get in the United States. What we've been expecting for a long time is that there'll be a transition where there was a process when the Model Y came out where Elon tried to remove as many features as possible that people can find in the X as a way to compel people to move up. A great example of this is the HEPA filter system that has been heavy in demand in China during COVID. And a lot of folks are walking away from Rolls Royces, et cetera, to come to the Model X and Y, or Model X and S, and partially because of the HEPA filters that are built in. And so I bring up this issue because we expected a migration of features from the X down to the Y. But the problem is that the more this happens, the less reason people have to actually buy an X. So the first of these features to transition is the HEPA filter solution because the Chinese folks really wanted it. And another sort of sidebar note on this whole thing is the fact that there's been a discussion of, well, Elon is putting design studios in different parts of the world, and everyone keeps telling me, wait a second, there's going to be a new Tesla coming out, and it's going to be the Berlin or China or India version of that vehicle. What if the vehicles that are currently there, you need to drive high volumes to pay off all the engineering costs? And so the question that comes up is, what if all that you have to do is use your design center to figure out local tastes in terms of feature focus of those vehicles? And I think that's a great use of those design centers and have them contribute to what major changes are made for the vehicles when changes are being made. So, I think that, for example, with the Cybertruck, there may be width of tire issues relative to certain roads in different parts of the world. There are all these issues that kind of pop up. So I wanted to run you by all of this information because I just think there's a rich block of info that are out there. By the way, don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy our show. I also wanted to sort of review the fact that, there's this, there's a lot of data you can obviously see. Elon avoids discussing things like what's your backlog, et cetera. And we find out those numbers when sales numbers are provided, but not before. So as you know, the 27th is when earnings are coming up. I think one of the fun questions is going to be, how many vehicles did you actually produce that weren't part of Q4 that will be part of Q1 of 2021? And therefore, we can sort of see the head start that they got. Very doubtful he'll answer that question, but I do believe it's a big question to hear the answer to, because getting a 40 to 50,000 vehicle jump start allows Q1 from China to almost be, to be like 100, 140,000 vehicles possibly if they're pushing hard. And then you tag that with similar or greater numbers from Fremont and you have a nice, 250 to 300,000 vehicle quarter that starts to come into the possibility realm, which times 4 ends up being 1 million plus vehicles. So all these possibilities start to emerge. The only fly I see in the ointment right now that I'm concerned about is, what is the Chinese reaction going to be to Elon sort of sneaking around the rules? As you've seen, Jack Ma has gotten his hand slapped and he's disappeared, and he's a billionaire. Obviously, Elon is not going to disappear because he's a U.S. citizen. But the issue is that the Chinese have been trying to protect domestic producers, and Elon is doing a number of things that result in those entities not being protected. And so it brings up this question of, we have all these protected producers that are no longer protected by you, and what do we do about that situation? And I think the answer to this is, I want to say the answer is unknown, but the answer to it is, we're going to find out pretty soon. And thus far, the Chinese seem to be okay with it because he's not following the letter of the law, he's following the general rule of the law. And I just feel like he's sneaking around the back door there. There are all these little decisions that he made, key example being $41,800 is the price on the new Model Y at the low end. The subsidies are allowed of $2,800 in China, below $4,200. So clearly, Elon designed that vehicle with a price point in mind relative to how the subsidies were going to hit, knowing that that lower price point with the subsidies would drive huge volumes of sales. And I believe that's the case everywhere it goes, both in China, Europe. I think we're going to be the first two places. And when that vehicle gets to America, it's going to be bananas. You know, I had a funny experience. I went to watch a new customer looking at a Model Y, and I went to watch a new customer looking at a Model Y, and she made the comment, I love my X5 BMW, but it has a higher sight line. So one of the sort of guttings is that the suspension system of a Model Y isn't changeable like it is in a Model X. And then the other thing that Elon did was the ride height of the Model Y sort of sits. So it's a relatively low center of gravity, good performance, but there's a real issue there in terms of elevation for snow clearance, as well as sight lines that you get from a regular size SUV above cars, so you can kind of anticipate what the traffic's going to look like, because you're not sitting at the same level as the sedan, which the Model Y is, and you can't change it like you can with the Model X. So therefore, you're kind of stuck in this zone. So you can really feel little discomforts that he's trying to inflict to force you to go up to the higher price vehicle. And clearly, a lot of people are not doing that. So we shall see how this plays out. So congratulations to Tesla on circumventing the slowdown in production process the Chinese had in mind. The fact that we're opening up in 10 cities at once is totally awesome. Well done. I believe that we're going to see some really big things in 21 from Tesla. And the start is how they're handling a great quarter in Q4. And then what's really going to hit the stock on the 27th is if Elon is implying very huge numbers for this year, I think we could see an explosive upward move of the stock next week. At any rate, I want to thank you for your time. We clearly had some speculations in here, and therefore I expect a lot of blowback, because according to sort of the enemies of our show, all these 10 locations only got one vehicle each, and they had 10 people that went to buy them. And so if you want to believe that that's that low number, I'll let you have your say. But for the smart people, I think you understand that Elon's serious about moving a lot of vehicles, and that's the case here. Just a reminder about your health tips. Don't forget your 25 leg lifts per leg. Strengthens quad muscles, reduces the chance of knee issues. Also wanted to encourage you to consider a 2-5 or some other fasting diet for your mental health boost, etc. Also wanted to encourage you to consider not going to bed within 4 hours of eating, minimum 2 to allow the food to digest. Also wanted to encourage you to think about your sleep habits in terms of maybe getting an app on your phone to make sure you don't have sleep apnea issues if you live alone. And then finally, don't forget our eating food health tips, particularly focused on the fact that you actually have, it's a lot better move for you to not eat fried foods more than once a week. That was from our kidney doc. At any rate, this is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. Tschüss, German, au revoir, French, Lehitrot, Khoda Hafez, Farsi, Zdravstvuyte, hello in Russian, Ni hao ma, hello in Chinese, Ohio gozaimasu, Japanese. E bueno, ella vita, according to an Italian person I met, what he said was that meant, amen, that's life. But I'm looking forward to my Italian friends updating me on that. Hey do, Swedish, namaste, Hindi, and my final one would be, I guess I'm going to leave it at that, because playing an instrument or doing some dancing is the other one that was recommended by an NIH mental health doc that you might want to consider as well as a way to help boost your mental faculties as well. Any rate, have a great day. Bye for now. Thanks once again for joining us. Please take time to like and subscribe, and please share constructive comments. I know we have friends in China that have commented previously about the need for the Model Y at the beginning of this year, and I'm looking forward to your comments as well to let us know how things are going there and how the vehicles are being received by customers and how they're doing in general. Have a great day. Bye for now, and we look forward to our next conversation.